Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cougar Talk. I'm your host, Ted Kirkpatrick, Springfield class of '82. We've got a real special guest today. That is Kevin McCormick, Bonner Ursinus College and Springfield Delco Hoops coaching legend. Kevin, welcome to Cougar Talk.
Ted, I appreciate that. That word, all I ever hear when somebody says that is old. You are old.
It's all good. We're all together, Kevin. We got a lot of stories to tell.
100%, 100%. I some truth. I've had a chance to see a couple of your previous episodes,
Yeah.
and I want to echo Mike Ciano's statement that you are a natural at this. You are really comfortable and look comfortable doing it. You're doing a great job with it.
We'll see how it goes. There's a lot of stories to be told at Springfield. I'm going to try to reach out to some people and hear their stories. So looking forward to it. But thank you.
Well, as I responded when you first asked me, I think it's a great endeavor, and it will provide a great legacy for, listening to Joe Stump's stories were outstanding.
Right? I mean, isn't that incredible? I mean, beyond the sports stories, there's just so much history that he talks about Springfield and so on. So I really get more of a kick out of that than the sports stories.
Yeah, describing where he was living as kind of the farms. He was out in the country, and everybody else was, in a totally different living style here in the town. It was great.
Right. Springfield's come a long way from 1930s.
Yeah, great pictures though he had too. That was awesome.
Yeah, they were really cool pictures.
Yeah.
So Kevin, just to introduce you, you're the current head basketball coach at Springfield High School. It's been coaching at Springfield for 32 years. I think I have my numbers right. And if not, please correct me. And a total coaching of 41 years.
That's correct. And aside from the 32 years as the head coach at Springfield, I was also 2 years as an assistant back in the 80s with Skip.
With Skip, we're definitely going to talk about that because I'm sure he was a big inspiration and mentor of you.
100%, 100%.
So one of the last times I saw Kevin, you were coming off the fantastic state tournament run and saw you play at Cardinal O'Hara against Bonner, the eventual state champion. And you had a hell of a run this year with your team.
A great run. And the kids really relished it. They went into the postseason with a purpose. You have some years where they've had enough by the time they reach the postseason.
Yeah.
But this team, even though we are so multi-sport dependent, the focus and the energy that they brought each and every day was outstanding. And listen to you and Mike talk about your experiences going through the tournament. We had similars, like the trip up to Abington Heights up in Clark Summit this year, and coming away with a terrific win. Right, that was probably the best memory of the postseason. But the crowd at O'Hara, that was a great crowd. With all the connections between Springfield and Bonner, it was a lot of fun. You're always disappointed that you didn't come out on the wrong side of the score, but I thought our kids played phenomenal.
I did too. I think with a few things either way, you could have won that game. You were within 4 to 6, in the last few minutes.
Correct.
But I had an experience after the game. I went up to talk to you, and you seemed kind of a little emotional, but it wasn't sadness. It was like I was looking at you, and I think it was almost pride in your team or a happiness kind of thing. Like, what were you feeling after that game?
Well, it was a feeling that I think we achieved everything we could hope for with that team.
Yeah.
Right? You come into a season and if you have a blueprint or an outline and you say, if everything goes right, I think we can get to this.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's what we got to.
Yeah.
And
you got to get lucky sometimes. I mean, I look back to our state runs and sometimes you got to get lucky. You're playing against a better team.
Yep.
And sometimes it falls your way, sometimes it doesn't. But I agree with you. I think that team really, reached its zenith.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and it was a fun team to coach too. Like we would get toward the end of the season, and the coaches, we would talk after a practice and say, we have not walked off this court and said that was a bad practice.
Wow, that's something to be said.
Yeah, and I think that's a tribute to the competitiveness and the fun that those kids had each and every day playing the game.
Yeah.
So
So what keeps you what makes you love coaching so much, and what's that keeps your engine going, your level of enthusiasm, your motivation for not a short amount of time, for 41 years of coaching. I mean, what is it in your kind of engine that makes it go, and kind of where do you think that's come from?
oh, I have a little different story than a lot of people, where it was actually my mother that introduced me to the game.
Wow.
She had played in high school at Hallahan High School, which was a terrific Catholic league school back in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. When she was done playing, she actually played some semi-pro ball with a gentleman by the name of Ralph Namoli, who Delaware County people would recognize his name. He coached Darby Colwyn to a state title back in the early 70s.
Yeah, great team.
But Ralph was originally from South Philly and had gotten to know my mother and her family, and invited her to play on a couple of the teams that he put together to do a little barnstorming. She started a family early. Her and my father married, just a year or so out of high school before my father went off to war, went off to the Korean conflict. Then started having children. They moved to Southwest Philly. But it was my mother who put the ball in my hand and, really encouraged me to play. I had two older siblings, an older sister who went on to become a surgeon. And I had an older brother, 15 months older, so close to Irish twins. And we were best friends. We were inseparable. So, where one went, you had two.
Yeah.
We were always playing games. We were always competing. And I just had it. I was enamored with it. I love the game. And
That's
then
cool.
my mother's older brother happened to be a teacher and a coach down at Bishop Newman High School in the early 60s. And he would bring my brother and I to the games, and they were terrific. We actually were following them a year that they won the city title. They won the Catholic League title. And then they went on and beat Lincoln with Larry Cannon in the city championship game, and just made friends for life. And I could walk into a gym and in a locker room, and it will take me back immediately to like Newman's locker room,
Yeah.
Tommy Moore's locker room. It's just, it was in my blood,
Yeah.
and I think it was there that it was born and nurtured.
Yeah.
Fortuitously in 68, we moved out of Southwest Philadelphia. Areas were changing, and there was a mass exodus
Yeah.
from West Philly and Southwest Philly out to particularly Drexel Hill. I think my parents originally put a deposit on a place in Broomall,
Yeah.
and that fell through. And then we went to Drexel Hill, and that's the best thing that happened. Like it really was the mecca of basketball in the Philadelphia area for a few years. Like, you saw the article that Frank Fitzpatrick had put together
Yeah.
back in the I think it was like 2012, 13, 14, in that era, about what basketball was like in Drexel Hill in the 70s, the 60s and 70s. And I soaked it up every day,
That's such a great story. I just read that story that you sent, and what I took away from it, more than just the basics of a lot of hoopers, was kind of the range of ages that played against one another.
Yep.
You had kids like you that could possibly play against a Paul Arizin, who was 20 years older than you, or a Jimmy Lynam, or certainly a high school player. And
There
I
was
had
a
the
there,
same experience.
there was a distinct pecking order.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Drexel Hill Elementary, where we played, was that there were two courts. There was a 10-foot court that the older guys played on, and then the 8-foot court that the younger guys would play on until the older guys needed a younger guy to play. And then you'd get picked and say, all right, get up here. We need a 10th,
That's
right?
right. And you were just hoping that you would
Oh,
get picked,
you
right?
hope you get picked, and then you hope you didn't make a mistake because, you know, if you had to sit, they were not happy. Like if you
That's
got
right.
beat, you had to sit. And that might have been the worst fate of all. It might have been your last time getting a tryout.
That's right.
Uh,
And you wouldn't want to take the last shot. You know, you give it to somebody else,
oh,
right?
100%. 100%. You learned a lot of lessons on those courts.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and with that also went to a very good CYO program. All right. We moved out of Philadelphia. We lived in MBS, but we used our grandparents' address to go to St. Francis de Sales. Okay.
Mm.
Because MBS was just so big.
Monsignor
St.
Bonner.
Fran, no, MBS, Most Blessed Sacrament. It was the
Oh, sorry.
largest. It was the largest Catholic grade school in the country. Okay, my sister did first grade there. There was 108 girls or 108 students in her classroom, and there were 8 first grade classrooms. They had over 3,500 students, first through 8th grade.
Mm.
So my mother said, "Yeah, this is not going to work for the two of you. We're going to send you over to St. Francis de Sales, much smaller." And it was great. It worked out great. I was there through 3rd grade, moved to Drexel Hill, and right away, St. Andrews was a great fit for us.
Yeah.
It was bigger than St. Francis de Sales, but it was a great fit.
I mean, those were the days where you'd move to a neighborhood and just there was mountains of kids all over the place. You know, your age, plus or minus 5 years.
Plus, just around the corner was Drexel Hill Elementary. So, and that's where everybody went. Everybody went and played at Drexel Hill Elementary. So it was referred to as the courts. You know, wherever you were, we're going to be over the courts. Everybody knew where you meant.
So what was that like playing outside there and then going up to
St. Andrews?
St. Andrews?
Well, interesting. The courts ended up being where we would practice because St. Andrews did not have a gym. Okay. We would get one night of practice during the season at Prendy on a Monday night. And if we wanted any other time, we would practice outside at the courts. And luckily, you know, we had a young guy who was coaching us, Tom Faustman, just out of the Army, took the team. And in our 8th grade year, we won the Pennsylvania state title. It was outstanding. Now, you talk about there's role players and superstars. We had a superstar. Okay, Dan Hastings was phenomenal. Like he played varsity CYO basketball from 5th grade on. He played 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as varsity basketball. He was that good. He eventually went on and was Bo Ryan's first collegiate recruit at Wisconsin when Bo was an assistant coach. Okay, so Danny was his first big-time recruit. Danny's also another trivia answer. Who was the first person Dick Vitale introduced on a live ESPN game but Danny Hastings?
Wow, that's a great story.
Great story.
And he had a huge career at Bonner, too. I mean,
had a great career at Bonner, played varsity from his freshman year. You know, the CYO was a lot of fun. And from that team, you know, Danny, of course, was the best. A couple of the other guys eventually just filtered out of basketball. They played high school CYO. They just weren't motivated by it. But Danny's connection and interactivity eventually led me to ending up at Ursinus. I'll get to that later. But out of CYO, I originally went to Malvern Prep. Okay. More for academics than athletics. And then between 10th grade and 11th grade, Malvern Prep had run into some serious financial issues, and they were raising the tuition without raising any of the scholarships. You know, their deal back then was they could get us to the same price as Bonner to go to Malvern. So we had done that. But at the time, when I was a freshman, a tragedy hit the family, and during Thanksgiving dinner at my grandparents' across town in Drexel Hill, a neighbor ran in and screamed that your house is on fire, and everybody's like,
Oh,
"No, this house is fine." No, the McCormick house over on Turner is
oh
on fire.
no. Wow.
So, so it was one of those. We went for Thanksgiving dinner, and we stayed for 2 years at my grandparents' house. Like, luckily, they had space to move us in. So our four children, two parents, the six of us moved in at a house that already had five people living there. Uh, but it was a great experience. It was, it's what families do. Um,
That is what a lot of families did back in the day, before our time. You lived with your
yep.
grandparents and you had a
Yep.
whole three generations or four sometimes living together.
100%. 100%.
And there's
Um,
some lessons learned there too, right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, well, it was funny. I'm going to tell a story I don't really tell. Uh, so the house burnt down on Thanksgiving night. Um, Monday, we're back to school at Malvern, and I'm certainly not proud of it. It's one of those things that makes me appreciate people getting second chances.
Yeah.
End of workouts, so it's November, end of workouts. Come down to the bookstore, the door is open, and myself and a couple friends decided that was an omen. After the house was burnt down,
Yeah.
God was providing for us, and I grabbed a pair of sneakers that I shouldn't have, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So um, the word got around, that somebody, hoisted some things from the bookstore. Well, we got caught, and
Yeah.
so, I sat out the freshman year of basketball at Malvern, played high school CYO for St. Andrews. Malvern was great. It was like, okay, it was a young kid. Situations kind of dictated that he made a
Yeah.
bad decision.
Yeah.
Learned a valuable lesson, right?
Yeah.
But I also learned that people deserve second chances,
Yeah.
right? So got a lot of lessons out of that one. Then
Does it
Malvern,
remind you any um, second things that you gave to somebody in the future? Like a
oh,
second
100%,
opportunity.
100%. Um, you know, there was an era here where, like, if kids got caught maybe doing something they shouldn't have on a Friday night, you know, they could be removed from the team.
Yeah.
And I would always say, hey, we all make mistakes,
Yeah.
you know, and they're high school kids. So,
Yeah.
we always look to give them a second chance. Certainly had punishments, right?
Yeah.
You had accountability,
That's right.
but nothing was permanent. So it was a great lesson to learn.
So, were you at the time when you moved from Malvern? Were you glad to go to Bonner? Were
It
you apprehensive? What were your feelings at that
That's a
point?
great question. I really enjoyed my time at Malvern. My older brother did not. Okay,
Mhm.
John was a fighter. You know, it was just in our nature, right? Like it was a fight or flight. He was a fight guy, right?
Yeah.
And he missed his friends who had gone to Bonner. I assimilated very well at Malvern. Enjoyed my classmates. I'm still friends with a number of them today.
Hmm.
But knowing the financial situation that we were in, remember, like we had lost a house,
Yeah.
right? We had, another tragedy while we were living at our grandmother's house. Okay, a younger sister was killed in a car accident.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
so
Mm.
finances were tough.
Yeah.
So
That's
it,
tough.
yeah, it was a no-brainer to make the jump to Bonner. And all my friends, like my CYO friends and a lot of other people that I'd known through basketball were
Yeah.
there and were welcoming. It was great. It was a good move. If I had stayed at Malvern, I don't know what my career path would have been because, believe it or not, I left as Fran Dunphy was coming in to become the head coach at Malvern.
Yeah.
Okay. The coach who had us my sophomore year, he was let go and Dumpf came in. But going to Bonner, I then had a chance to get back with Dan Danny Hastings, and eventually Danny's sister, Rose, married Tommy Inglesby. Okay. Well, Tommy enters the scenario because after my senior year, I had paid my matriculation fee to go to Drexel and just, be a student.
Yeah.
And late April 1st, it was April Fool's Day, Skip Worley was appointed the head coach at Ursinus. Okay. He's trying to put together a recruiting class. And before that, he put a coaching staff together. And Tommy Inglesby was the first person he asked to join his staff.
Mm-hmm.
So Tommy put in a good word for me because he had seen me play over the past couple of years because he'd be out to see us with Rose to watch her brother, and said, he'd be a good one. So Skip came over, promised nothing, just a chance.
Yeah.
And, my mother, she knew how much it meant. And she said, yeah, we're going to make this happen. So
That's great.
It was great.
I was just reading this article today about things that happen in everybody's lives that go sour or that don't work out. And at the time, it can be devastating.
Yep.
But in reality, what happens in life is it's a new opportunity to do something else.
Sure.
And
sure.
And it can be a great opportunity to do something else and put you on a different path. And it's a blessing in that way. Life's a blessing in that way. There's so many different opportunities. And you and I talked kind of before this podcast just about communication, et cetera. And we had talked about connections and kind of that happens in the basketball community. And you already mentioned 10 different connections that made your life go this way or next. I mean, when you said connections to me earlier, what were some of your thoughts about that?
Well, I think you never know when that connection is going to appear and explain why it happened, right? Like when it initially happened, you may not have any reason, but I kind of live with the theory that there are no coincidences. Things happen for a reason, right? So people are brought into your life, and maybe the main reason is not today, but at some point it becomes clearly evident of why they came into your life. And it's blessed me my entire life, my uncle, just like I'll call a spade. He was a ball buster. Okay. So he besides being a teacher, he also eventually became an attorney, and he owned bars. Like him in Southwest Philly, the address we used was actually a bar to go to St. Francis de Sales. Okay. Now, with that, we learned responsibility at an early age. Okay. On the weekends, we're in there cleaning the bar. Okay.
Yeah.
At a young age. I'm like 6, 7, 8 years old. My brother and I, as the neighbor who was turning, but we were still living down there, my parents would actually put us on the trolley, and we would go down to Big Brothers in Center City, Philadelphia, for basketball, for swimming. It was a great experience. But imagine putting a 7-year-old on a trolley in any area to send them to Center City, Philadelphia, to walk 2 blocks to go to 22nd and Van Pelt for Big Brothers. But that's what your parents did, right? And that's the contacts we made there. A guy, Mackenzie, came back into my life later. We were playing a game, and he showed up at West Catholic to see us play because he remembered us down at Big Brothers, But my uncle, like, he was a driver to me, right? Like, he would have us do push-ups all the time. He was insane. And then he would bring us into the bar and bet people that we couldn't do like 100 push-ups in a row, right? And okay, get down and do it. And that was a challenge to me, right? But that's like 7, 8 years old, Ted, And then as we progressed,
some lessons, right? I mean,
absolutely,
competitiveness and that sort of thing.
Then he bought a couple of boarding houses down in Wildwood, right? Yeah. So he had connections for people to rent it by the students he taught at Newman, All right. Well, the weekend would come and he needed to get it cleaned up. So we would come down on weekends. We could stay, but Sunday was cleaning day, changing the beds, cleaning the bathrooms, vacuuming the halls, vacuuming the rooms. All right. That was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, right? You learning those responsibilities.
Yeah.
It it was a unique upbringing, but, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well said. Just to kind of finish your childhood, who are some of your idols or your mentors, the people you looked up to, and as you were maybe 10, 15 years old, and I would say both like professional athletes or what have you, and local idols. Who'd you aspire to be?
All right. So I love the Big Five, right? Like you'd sit on at home, watch Channel 17, and part of the enjoyment was as the game was over, they would put the camera on the steps as the people were exiting, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, that's so and so, that's so and so, that's so and so, right? Well, the guys that played in the Big Five, I loved, and one of them was Mike Hauer. I loved Mike Hauer. Okay, so a little later, between my coaching, the start of my coaching, and the return to my coaching, I reffed for a few years. Okay. And one of the leagues I reffed in was the over 35 league down at Watkins Avenue in Upper Darby. Okay.
mhm.
The first night is a game with Mike Howard playing against Toby Tyler and some of the other legends from Delaware County. And Toby went in for a layup, and Mike Howard just walled him up, right? Like laid him out. And I don't blow my whistle. Well, Toby is screaming at me, literally screaming at me. And I look at him and said, Toby, he was my idol. He yelled, all right, I'll give you one time you can do that. But you better start calling it fair now.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
said, absolutely. So like
Tell us about Howard. He played in the Big
he
Five.
played at Bonner,
Yeah.
right? He was a Bonner grad, and then he went on to play at St. Joe's, had a terrific career at St. Joe's. It was Mike Howard and Danny Kelly went through together at St. Joe's. Well, Danny Kelly was the coach at Malvern my ninth grade year. Okay, so like that was special. Even though I wasn't able to play, like I was exposed to Danny Kelly, and he was a great guy. Mike Howard, he was a great competitor, right? Like he just was every time he stepped on the floor, whether it was college or even these adult leagues. It's like, yeah, now I know why you were the best rebounder I ever saw. Like you're insane.
Yeah.
But then locally, like we had guys that were just outstanding at the courts. You know, Billy Fuse, or excuse me, Tommy Fuse, Haggerty that went to LaSalle. Both Tommy Fuse and Jimmy Haggerty both went to LaSalle from Bonner. When Tommy Inglesby would come down and play, that was always special. When Dumpf would come over and play, that was special. Um, you know, Petrie would come over, Lee Tress, like the older guys that would come down, Frankie Moffitt that played at LaSalle, Joey DeCoco that played at LaSalle from Bonner. They were all just really, really fundamentally sound players that came down and you watched them play and you appreciate it. Mike Stack, Eddie Stavansky, those guys.
Yeah.
Like they all played at the courts and we got to watch them compete, you know?
Yeah.
It
It was so much fun. And back then, if you won the game, you got to stay on the court, right?
you stayed on the court, and if you
You had to
lost,
win.
you might be 4 or 5 games before you get back on that court. There were that many players
That's right.
waiting to get on, and if you had a long enough wait, you went down and played on the little courts until your turn came up again on the big courts. You know,
I believe that's what a lot of those people that came out of that scenario, with the competitiveness, that's what made them so competitive. They didn't want to
100%,
lose, and they learned to do the things in their alley that were valuable for the team.
100%, and you learned a pecking order, right? You learned like it's the end of the game. You're not the guy that's supposed to be taking the shot. If you're going to give it to the guy that consistently makes it,
That's
and
right.
you don't see I thought your line was pretty good that your kids only played in games that you paid for. I thought that was a good line.
That's
Like,
right.
totally different than what we had.
That's right.
We literally would shovel the court to play basketball,
That's
right?
right.
We
Yeah,
literally did it. So there are experiences that this generation will never know about. You know,
that's true. Did you
uh,
do any basketball camps back in the day, Kevin?
the one basketball camp I ever remember doing was uh, McDonough camp out at Archbishop Carroll, and Eddie Hastings drove my brother and I to the camp. Okay. And it was great. You had Herb McGee putting on his shooting exhibition.
Yeah.
You had a different speaker every day, um, but didn't necessarily go to a lot of camps. I got to Bonner just as they stopped going up to Pocono Mountain.
Hmm.
Pocono Mountain was Dick Bernhardt was the athletic director, and he at one time was the coach at Bonner before I got there. And he would bring players up each summer to work. Some of them worked the entire summer, and others worked just a couple weeks. But they all came back with Pocono Mountain equipment. They had Pocono Mountain reversibles and gym shorts were actually our practice gear at Bonner. We had nothing that said Bonner on it. It was all Pocono Mountain. So luckily, a few of my friends, knowing that I had never been up there, grabbed a couple and allowed me to have it for practice plans.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. I have
But
great memories of camp at Ursinus, and you may have
yeah,
worked Skip's camps up there, but did
yep,
you ever work Skip's camps?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. They were
Well,
great. I remember you guys coming up.
I went there maybe 4 years in a row, with the whole Springfield crew,
Yep.
and the level of speakers we had were phenomenal. They were all, the big five coaches, your Lefty Irvins and
Yeah.
Herb McGee from Textile and Jimmy Lynham.
Yeah, I know he had Weinauer up one time from Penn.
Yep.
Skip was
Craig,
so connected.
Craig Littlepage was
Craig
up there.
Littlepage. Yeah, yeah.
So we had the best speakers. Jimmy Lynham was great, but everybody looked forward to Herb McGee on Friday. He would come up and do his. Everybody's seen his
Just
shoe.
phenomenal. Phenomenal.
You'd sit there and watch him. He's like, wow.
Enamored. Well, I think that's a good segue into Ursinus and how much it molded my life.
Yeah.
Skip. If people ask if I have a mentor, it was Skip Worley.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, somewhat of a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
Skip was in his 40s when he was coaching us, and Mike, his wife, a little bit younger. So it was always a great relationship. Like when Mike and Skip, we had the benefit of Skip taking a sabbatical his first year coaching at Ursinus. So he was there every day. We could stop in and talk to him about anything and everything. And I think that really was key to the success he enjoyed at Ursinus, because the 9 guys that he recruited that first year, we drank the Kool-Aid. We were all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I guess 5 of us saw it through to the end. But it was a learning curve. We were coming into college at a team that I wouldn't say apathetic, but they did not have a whole lot of success. And we would run open gyms until practice was allowed to start. And clearly, the first years were the competitors. Like the upperclassmen certainly didn't have the same level of competition. Another thing that we benefited from that first year, in the first year only, it was the last year the 76ers did their preseason camp at Ursinus. So it was a week of the Sixers, and I will tell you, it may have been one of the most enjoyable weeks we've had. Like, we all talk about the shootout that Julius Erving and a guy that was drafted out of Michigan, Mosley, an unbelievable 3-point shooting contest. Long before there was a 3-point line, they shot from out of bounds. You remember the red borders on the
Sure.
Ursinus court?
Yeah.
These 2 guys went, well, first off, the guy from Michigan, he went 10 for 10. Julius Erving went 9 for 9 and missed the 10th one. So if anybody ever told you that Julius Erving could not shoot, I would be the first one to tell you that's a total lie. The man could shoot. He was just better at attacking the rim. Like
Yeah.
he was phenomenal. They had a guy, well, Darryl Dawkins was insane. He was insane as you thought. They had a draft pick, Wilson Washington, that for some reason Darryl Dawkins nicknamed Motorcycle Head because he thought his haircut reminded him of a motorcycle seat. So he called him Motorcycle Head. He had nicknames for everybody. Toward the end of the week, Gene Shue was the coach. Tempers do get a little hot, because the scrimmages were very competitive. And George McGinnis, who was Adonis, okay, and Steve Mix got into a brawl. And I mean, it was haymakers being thrown. Nobody was stepping in to break it up. Julius stormed off the court like F this and stormed out. But to watch Gene Shue then bring it all together and wrap up the week on such a positive note, that's professional basketball. Like, it was really inside the NBA long before inside the NBA became a show. It was great because we were allowed to be in the locker room with them. So we're joking down there. Dawkins, of course, was always holding court, but that was a great experience. So Skip had the sabbatical and the Sixers last year of training camp at Ursinus. They had to move because the surface at Ursinus, if you remember, it was that tartan surface.
Yeah.
And science was coming out about the wear and tear on the limbs. So they had to leave Ursinus and go. I think they went a few years at Franklin and Marshall, and then they went some other places after that. But it was a great first year and a great foundation that was built by Skip to what eventually, we went from 1-19 the year before we got there. We went 500 the first year. The second year, we took a dip. He had taken some chances on some recruiting kids.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily work out. If they would have worked out, it would have been terrific. They were good players. They just didn't fit in with the culture there at Ursinus long before culture was a thing, right?
Yeah,
in
right.
college.
That's right.
And then our junior year, it really kicked in. We had some success. We got to the playoffs. And then the next year, Skip, if you know Skip, he's the ultimate, the power of positive thinking, right? And he just planted the seed of like, we can be a Final Four team. We can be a Final Four team. And that was our mantra the whole year. And sure enough, it manifested. And at the end of the year, we had some terrific wins. We were certainly cardiac kids winning late in a number of the games. But we made it to the NCAA Final Four.
That's amazing. Tell me about the Final Four. I mean, I guess it was obviously in another city, and what was it like?
So we had a fly out, right? It was Augustana, Illinois. You fly into Quad City, Illinois Airport. Okay, now that's after you stop. I think we were in Tennessee, and take a puddle jumper on Mississippi Valley Airlines, right? And I will say that there were a couple of the bags had to be utilized. All right, like a couple of us. Yeah, it was pretty choppy, right?
Yeah,
and it was also
you weren't used to flying, I guess. I mean, maybe that was for some players their first trip,
time,
right?
First time for me. First time ever being on an airplane. So that was interesting. In the meantime, a bunch of the parents were busing from Ursinus out to Quad City, Iowa, to eventually get to Augustana, which was just a couple miles away. It was just across the border. So we're out there. It's ourselves, Potsdam State, Otterbein, and Augustana, the host college, actually qualified, which it wasn't by design. They earned their way there. So it was just out of coincidence that they ended up with the home court advantage. So it's fun. You have like a luncheon downtown. Mm-hmm. They treat you like royalty. At least that's what it felt like to Division III teams. Sure. You get your hour of practice time for an open gym or an open practice. And then you get to game day. So we open with Potsdam. Augustana opens with Otterbein. Okay. So a great game. Potsdam wins by 2, I think, at the end. I forget what the exact score was, but it was one hell of a basketball game, okay? And then Augustana knocks off Otterbein. We were the last, I think we were the last team or the last year that they ran a consolation game. So, they tell you that only one team wins the last game. Well, in 1981, 2 teams won their last game. We end up beating Otterbein,
Nice.
and Potsdam won in rather handily against Augustana. So the Potsdam's Ursinus game was really what was played for the championship, and it was a great game. It was a battle.
Wow.
They
So
had a young man.
Tell me a little bit about that team, your teammates, and kind of everybody.
So we're friends for life, Ted. I mean,
Yeah.
you were aware of it. I know you're just setting this up for me, but Mike Brophy and I were roommates for 3 years. We've been best friends for 50. Right? Larry Davis, who came out of Haverford High School. I've known Larry since CYO days and Aronimink Swim Club. We were members together over there. So I've known him probably close to 60 years now. Other locals, Jim Mobley from Norristown. Division III recruiting, as you know, from your Dickinson days, right? You got to get lucky sometimes, and you get somebody who maybe slipped.
Yeah.
Mobes could have played Division I. Like he was phenomenal. So, he and Mike Brophy were our backcourt. And then up front, out of Camden Catholic, a guy, Dave Petita.
Big guy.
Big guy, was a year behind us.
Remember him.
And then Skip had brought in a kid from up Central Jersey, from St. John Vianney, Tom Broderick. And Tom came in as about a 6'5". I swear, soaking wet, he was probably no more than 200 pounds, right? He was long string, but he was a high jumper. So he plays JV Ursinus basketball his freshman and sophomore year. He grows a couple inches, still has a high jumper's mentality, okay? And he developed offensively. Well, he now comes in. He ends up being an All-American his junior and senior year at Ursinus after playing JV basketball his first and most of his second year at Ursinus. So that helped us. Then we had other classmates, Dennis Letty, just a terrific guy, hard worker. Dennis was socially advanced. I'll put it that way. He always found the good times wherever we went, right?
Yeah.
Mike Cola came from Great Valley. So those were the guys that were really.
Was Jay DeFruscio?
Jay DeFruscio was also 1 year behind. Jay, of course, played at Bonner. We played together. Then we played, 3 years together at Ursinus. Jack Devine. Jack Devine also had a role on the team. Kevin Callahan from Camden Catholic. It's a family that has stayed together.
Yeah. Well, and then the matriarch of that family was, or the patriarch, I should say, not the matriarch, Skip Worley. So what was he like? I mean, you guys kept in touch with him for years, but what did he add to that team?
Just his conviction to play the game the right way. All right. And he was a great educator. Had a great demeanor. The open door policy, you could talk to him about anything, right? He'd be honest with us. We would be honest with him. He never ducked confrontation. If it called for it, he handled it in a great fashion. But he was just a great connector. Again, that word. We got this before we even got to school. We were receiving mailings in the summer, like what our workout should be, and then motivational packets.
Mm-hmm.
He would do billboards. Like today, it's an extinct art, but he would put billboards up with articles from different basketball magazines, and he would find stuff and we would read it every day. Like he knew what he was doing because it got us into the locker room early. It got us reading what was up on the board. What message was he trying to send? and he stayed in touch. He was a great communicator. Nothing was better than when email evolved. I'm sure you were on Skip's thought of the day, right?
Yeah, sure.
It started with, I think, 20 people, and I believe at the end it had over 4,000 people were subscribed. It got to the point where late in life he had to stop because it was stressing him figuring out how to do
He
it
had
every day,
groups of like 500 at a time
Correct.
because the email couldn't send out all the emails to everybody.
That's right. Um, and he stayed in touch with you. Like school would be out, and he'd want to know what we're doing this summer. And at the time, we were allowed to play in college sanctioned summer leagues.
Yeah,
Well, he wasn't per se allowed to go and watch, but he always knew who was playing, when they were playing, and he would follow up. Hey, how'd the game go? Just staying up to date with us, keeping an eye on us, right?
yeah,
And then when we were finished school, the relationship just evolved even further. You know, guys that have gone on to coach with him. Our first captain was a guy, Mike Piotrowicz. Our freshman year, he was a phenomenal captain. He kept us together as a group, right? He knew what the right thing to do was. He communicated well with Skip. He was a liaison for us, and he showed us the ropes at Ursinus, right? It was his fourth year. He was a terrific networker. An eloquent speaking guy. He's been uber successful. Well, after he graduated, Skip brought him onto the staff, and it was great. Sometimes you get worried that you're too close in age to the guys you're coaching, but Mike did a great job of separating himself from his playing days to now coaching, right? So
yeah,
he was the first. And then, he had Pete Bellis was an assistant up there who had played for him at Springfield. Ace Bell, nothing was better than taking the vans to a away game and having Ace on your bus, on your van, because the stories were awesome. Like
yeah.
baseball guys always have stories, and
Always.
Ace was great at telling them. He had such a gift. Timmy Boyle, God rest his soul, who we lost way too young recently. Also played for Skip at Springfield. He came up and was coaching at Ursinus with us. And then once we graduated, Jay went to work. Jay DeFruzio went to work with Skip, and he parlayed that into eventually being the head coach at Wheeling Jesuit, right?
Yeah. Stevie Donahue, was he?
So yeah, so here's a quick story. So when I graduated, Pete Bellis got the head coaching job at Marple Newtown. He invited me to coach his JV team. All right, it was great. We had a lot of fun. Best player on Marple that year was R.C. Massimino. So,
Sure.
like, we had Coach Massimino at a lot of games and a number of the Villanova players, so that they were over quite a bit. That was a lot of fun. But at the end of the year, Pete was teaching at the time over in Colwyn, and his teaching position was eliminated. And Pete's wife was not too happy and let him know that, like, that was not going to be the lifestyle for them. So he got out of coaching, went into professional working, I believe, for J&J, had a terrific career, but coaching profession lost a very good coach. Pete would have been a terrific
Yeah.
coach if he stayed in it long term. So I go into refereeing. Stevie Donahue joined Skip's staff, I think in like 84, like just shortly after he graduated. So Stevie stayed a couple years. Stevie then was invited to go with, I believe, Franny O'Hanlon over at Bonner. Okay. And Skip asked if I was interested in coming back from refereeing to coach, and I jumped at the chance. I can still remember we were at Mike Brophy's St. Patrick's Day party back in like 1986. And, I was married about a year, and my wife said, yeah, we can do this. That's fine. You love it. So, Steve leaves. I replace Steve, and where Steve's career went. Right,
Sure.
he parlays that. He was assistant at Penn with Dump for 10 years. Then he went up to Cornell, then Boston College, then Penn, and now he had a great year at St. Joe's.
Super.
Steve's a terrific coach.
Was he coach of the year A10, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah, and it was well deserved.
Yeah.
Right? He made a bold move, right? Addition by subtraction. A player was not buying into, Steve's vision of playing the game the right way. And that was really a bold move, but it paid dividends, big for Steve. So I then coached 2 years as an assistant with Skip. And the best story I ever had coaching with Skip, it was the second year we were up at the Geigel complex at Reading High. So we're in the state second round, and we're playing Allentown Central Catholic, okay? And their best player is a guy by the name of Billy McCaffrey, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a nice team. We've got a very nice team. The game opens. McCaffrey jumps center, taps it. They make 2 passes and throw it, an alley-oop, and he slams it, right? Down the floor, we get turned over. He comes down, does like a swan dunk. Last possession before Skip's had enough, we go down, we get a shot up, but they get a rebound, they kick it out, and McCaffrey is just drills a 3. So he's got 7 points, and it's like a minute and a half into the game. Skip calls timeout. We come over to the bench, and our kids were a little cocky. The kid looks up and says, "He ain't got shit." and myself and the other assistant coach started around and goes, "Did he just watch what happened?" So we battle back, but Allentown Central Catholic takes the game. So in the locker room afterwards, all right? And sometimes people say something that you remember for the rest of your life, right? It becomes a phrase that, as soon as you say it, everybody has a chuckle. So one of the reporters from the Delaware County Daily Times was up there, and it was a night that Georgetown was playing Princeton in a great game, right? I can still remember that being vivid. But we're talking about McCaffrey and how he's going to be at Duke, where he's already committed, right? Mm-hmm. And the reporter says to Skip and I, "He's really good, but he's no Rap Curry." Covering for Delaware County. And Skip and I afterwards, I don't know, are we seeing something different than other people are? So Billy McCaffrey goes to Duke, plays 2 years at Duke, wins a national championship, right? But gets recruited over, goes to Vanderbilt, and he becomes the SEC Player of the Year at Vanderbilt, okay? He was phenomenal, right? Oh, yeah. And now his nephew is now Christian McCaffrey, running wild through the NFL, right? Great genes.
Great genes.
But and not to besmirch Rap Curry at all. Yeah. Rap was one hell of a player. But the Player of the Year in the SEC, that's a whole different level, right? It's a whole different level. So that night we had a couple of things, he ain't got stuff, and he ain't no Rap Curry. I'm like, man, you talking about besmirching Billy McCaffrey's legacy.
That's funny.
Yeah.
The other connection, you mentioned Pete. Pete coached our team in '81.
Yep.
We went to the finals, and the other coach that was mentored under Skip was Jerry Quiedenfeld. Our coach.
100%. Yeah. When Skip was at Springfield.
My understanding is he took a lot of Skip's ideas and implemented. I think there were 2 different types of coaches, but
yes,
he did a lot of the things and learned a lot of things from Skip.
So Skip, we ran an offense, you probably are aware of it, was called Atlanta, right? Okay, so Skip would always tell us the stories that, this is why we called Atlanta. It's from UB Brown. And college students are like, there's got to be a certain level of BS in this story, right? And so, again, years go by. Skip and I go up to a basketball clinic up at Mercer Community College, right up in Jersey. Guy Howie Landa was the head coach up there, and Skip and Howie were good friends. And the speaker was going to be UB Brown. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, I definitely want to go to this. right? And I'd seen Yubi once before at a clinic at St. Joe's with Pete, the year I was with Pete. And that was legendary. Sometime I'll tell you about that one. But clinic's about to start. Yubi walks out on the floor. Now, Skip and I are sitting up top row at Mercer, right? Sitting back. Yubi looks up, and Yubi has very colorful language, okay? Very colorful. And I'll clean it up a little bit, but he looks up and goes, Jesus effing Christ. If I would have known you were going to be here, I would have been in the stands and you could have made the presentation. My jaw, like, oh no, seriously, he wasn't telling stories. Like him and you, we went to lunch afterwards. They were good friends. They were good friends.
We used to run that Atlanta play all the time.
All the time. We've tried to bring it back a couple times.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and with some success. Until years ago, Tom Doherty, God rest his soul, we lost him too soon as well. He knew the play because he was coaching against Tommy Inglesby in the Catholic League when Tommy would run it from time to time, right? So this offense had more reburst than any offense I think I've ever seen. So he gets the Strathaven job, and I jokingly put Atlanta in to run against them. And he's that's Atlanta. That's Atlanta. He's going ballistic on the sideline.
That's funny. Coach Queenfellow used to tell a funny story later on about when teams didn't know Atlanta, like we'd start running it, and our crowd would start cheering already, knowing that Kevin Boyle was going to do that back pick for Deion Irons going off, and then Deion was going to get it, flip it in, it was going to be 2 points.
Yep.
Because our crowd knew it was coming, and the other team didn't.
Yep. Yeah. It has all the components of a great offense, right?
Yeah.
Like that back pick, that's flex, right?
That's right. And we worked that like for hours. I mean, over a week, we would just run it and run it and run it. And you're like, all right, let's do the Atlanta again, because there's many different things that can come out of Atlanta.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's kind of a timing play. You got to read the defense. It's timing, and we had it down for sure.
Yeah. The elbow to elbow pass, like you learned how to box the defender off so that the pass could always be made. Your outside hand, catch and sweep, right? Let the down screen happen. We could run that play in our sleep, Ted.
We could.
Yeah.
So let's jump ahead, Kev. I don't want to jump over anything, so let me know. But so you get out of Ursinus, and how did you end up? What did you do next as far as your career and coaching?
So career, I started in the food brokerage business. All right. So I was looking for something that I wouldn't want to have to travel much. It was a local business. And it afforded me some time late in the day, right? Like I could finish up my stuff and get out, and I just was still into basketball. So that first year, like I said, I worked with Pete at Marple Newtown coaching the JV. Then he lost his teaching job, so he stepped away. So I got into refereeing for like 3 or 4 years, which I really enjoyed. But in the back, there was always something saying like, I think I'd rather be over on the side choosing this. And my professional career, I was starting to take on more responsibility, but it still was a non-travel. It was all Philadelphia market. The most I was driving up to Lancaster or, Harrisburg on a long day, So as that progressing, I joined Skip, and then I get the job over at Bonner after working 2 years with Skip. Now, here's the craziest thing. So I was the JV coach at Springfield also. The year before I went over to Bonner, our JV team was 1-21. Okay. We won our first game of the year against Octorara. Okay. And the kids, they're ecstatic. They're like, oh, we're doing this. Well, we start losing. And, you do stupid things as a kid. So I said, all right, I'm not going to shave until we win again. Well, we don't win the rest of the year. My wife at the time was my girlfriend. She was beside herself. She was totally beside herself. finally I had to figure out a graceful way to shave because I can't grow a good beard. It's ugly. Like there's patches and
Like this.
well, no, you trust me, mine's awful. Uh, but I parlay that into a coaching job over at Bonner, and Bonner was a great experience, and I learned valuable lessons. Okay, so I was let go after the second year. I had a difference of opinion with the administration. So we'll just leave it at that, okay? And I left admirably. I included in the pictures I sent you, Ted, the one picture in the Inquirer where they had the story of me being let go and a picture with the name Kevin McCormick under it, right? But as you can see from that picture, that's not me,
Right.
right? So the day it happened, I'm like, I'm the happiest guy on earth because even if my employer saw that Kevin McCormick got fired, that's not my picture. So I have plausible deniability. Like, no, that's not me. Right. So professionally, I was in great shape. So the Inquirer calls me and says, listen, we had the wrong picture. Would you mind coming down to our building and having a picture taken? I said, you are insane. I couldn't have paid you enough money to put that picture in that you put in yesterday.
That's a good story.
It was fun. So valuable lessons learned, but I still wanted to coach. So the Archbishop Carroll job had opened up, and Tommy Inglesby had called me while I was still the coach at Bonner and said, like, what do you think of this job? And I said, Tom, I think they've got talent there. I just don't think they're very tough, right? And again, the former coach was a friend of mine. I think he would agree with that assessment. So 2-3 weeks go by. I lose the Bonner job. Tommy gets announced as the head coach at Carroll. He calls me and says, hey, any chance you want to help me get these guys tougher? And I said, Tom, I would love to do it. I'm sure some of it was, revenge on my part,
Yeah.
which I had nothing against the kids. I loved the kids I coached at Bonner. It was more the administration.
Yeah.
So went and was an assistant coach with Tommy for 3 years. And that was really a valuable time. Tommy is one of the most competitive people I've ever met in my life. He motivates, he instructs. He gave us a lot of latitude. Larry Davis and I were his assistants, along with his brother Franny, and we had a great time. But over the 3 years, Ted, the talent that he brought in, and it was his name. He wasn't out recruiting people, right? And this was just on the cusp of the Catholic League going total open enrollment. It wasn't there yet, but they were allowing exchange students. Okay, so my third year there, Paul Romanchik shows up. He transfers from Malvern. Mike Ferkler leaves Malvern and shows up. Mike Zeke came over from Haverford School, but over the summer they bring in a guy, Rafael Bigas, okay, from Poland. Well, Biggie was a whole nother level. He was 6'9", could handle a ball. His dexterity was terrific. It wasn't like a 6'9" plotter. He would run the floor like he'd run 3-man and 5-man weaves, and he's handling the ball with no problem whatsoever. Just watch him, it's like, oh my Lord, this is a whole different level of basketball. And throwing Paul and some of the other guys that were playing, talent was oozing. Tommy Dearborn, who went on to play at Drexel. So Carroll has a name for itself. So colleges like St. Joe's, Villanova, they're all in the recruiting for Biggie. Well, they kind of challenged Tommy to play in a scrimmage at Simon Gratz High School up in North Philly, who's loaded. They've got a kid, Red Smith, that's gone to LaSalle, and I think Jeremy Lawson might have been, an underclassman, but he's coming along. Like, they've got big-time talent. And then a third team, Solanco out of Quarryville, Pennsylvania. Now, the reason they wanted them involved is because Temple was recruiting hard a guard by the name of Johnny Miller, okay, who went to Clemson first and then eventually did transfer back to Temple, had a great career, super speedy, right? So, again, one of those lifetime memories you get from basketball. We drive up to Simon Gratz, bunch of Carroll kids like, North Philly, oh, you know, like eyes wide open. Walk in the gym, you know, Gratz has a very nice gymnasium. The two other teams are already there. And across the gym, somebody yells, Biggie, which was our nickname for Raphael Biggis, right? So we're all like dumbfounded, like, what? So Solanko had an exchange student as well, Ursinus Jessicavicius, okay, which that name may not mean anything to a lot of people. But Ursinus went on to become a very, very good player at University of Maryland, okay? And today, he's one of the top 5 Eurobasket coaches in the world. Like, he coaches Fenerbahce right now over in the Euro League. And 2 years ago, he was the coach of the year. Like, he goes by Savas, I think, Savas Jessicavicius. But they had grown up together in the development programs in Europe. And they were friends. And I'm like, this is the greatest example of connections in basketball I think I've ever seen. It was to go to North Philly and a kid from Poland and a kid from, I think he was Lithuania, okay, are the connections.
Outstanding.
For us. It was unbelievable. It's a memory that I will always have and cherish. So it was fun. That year, Skip retires at the end of the 93-94 season. Carroll, we got knocked out of in the Catholic finals by Roman Catholic, you know, very good team, Donnie Carr, you know, loaded talent, okay? Yeah. So I come back to Springfield to coach. Skip was going to move into the AD position, so he was giving it up, and I was extremely thankful, like, for the opportunity to be a head coach again. Never suspected I'd be here as long as I have, Ted, but it's been a lot of fun coaching the high school in the community you live in. Some people shy away from that. I think it's been great, especially the era when my children were going through the school. You know, I knew all the kids, right? I don't have the same knowledge and understanding today, but the early years, you know, I did things differently than Skip, right? And Skip was an older coach who kind of had mellowed a little bit from when we were playing for him at Ursinus. And I was still, you know, full of piss and vinegar, you know, I was a taskmaster. I was tough to play for. I'll be the first to admit that, right? Mm-hmm. But we had great kids. And over the 90s, you know, we started to get better and better. We had a team, I forget the exact year, but we had Jason Zappazzotti, Pete Riviello, Brian Minot, Brandon Lockley. They were competitors. And we were finally starting to make an impression on the league. And so we were late in the season, and we had a game here, the old Blue Gym, against Pencrest. They were in first place. Now, Brandon Lockley, you couldn't get him to say 2 words in a season, right? In a season. So here we are, late in the game. Kid from Pencrest is on the foul line shooting shots, and Brandon is the third guy on the lane, right? So we got an inside guy. Pencrest has a middle guy. Brandon's the third guy. Now, this is like a 1-point game at the time with like a little over a minute to go, okay? First shot goes up. Kid makes it. Second shot, before the kid's about to shoot it, the middle guy next to Brandon turns and swings at him, and a melee breaks out, right? Like, Brandon takes off running. It's the funniest thing. Well, it turns out there was somehow a girl was involved in this, right? Wow. Brandon must have said something to the Pencrest kid about a female. He didn't take a liking to it, and it's just a melee. So Pencrest gets assessed 2 technical fouls. We end up winning the game because we end up winning from the foul line on technicals and then running the clock out at the end.
Great story.
You know, it's one of those, like, again, stories that stick with you. The quietest kid I ever coached, and he was the one that said something to cause this melee, which eventually caused us to win the game. But that was the team that kind of like started to push us. Then Steve Fattori joined, and he was a show. He was a show unto himself. Funny
1,000 point
story.
scorer, 1,000 point scorer, right?
1,000 point scorer who only played ninth grade his first year here. He was not a kid that was pulled up, right? Like he was strictly ninth grade. I really didn't know him because he came out of St. Kevin's. His dad, approached and said, like, would you be all right with him joining? I said, yeah, love to have him. Didn't know what the upside was. Well, he exceeded his upside. He was one of the hardest workers I ever coached. Early on in his sophomore year, his family would sit up behind us on the bleachers in the blue gym. You can picture that, right?
Sure.
And one time we're down the defensive end of the floor, and his grandmother yells out, "Steve, you have to stop working so hard on defense. We need you on offense." I turned around. Skip almost fell over. Like he did I just hear that? We're like, oh, no. He needs to work really hard down that end. He's going to be fine down this end. But that was one of those that stick with us. And then Steve's senior year, we were playing Coatesville. Coatesville had Johnny Allen, who's now the coach at Coatesville. Well, Johnny had a great career, went on to play at Seton Hall, was a terrific player. Well, Steve Fattori and Johnny Allen get into a shootout. I think Johnny Allen ended up with like 36 points. I think Steve had like 38 or 39. It was an unbelievable competition. We lost the game. As we're walking off the floor, the coach at Coatesville grabs my hand and says, "I don't care what color that young man is. Any coach wants to know if he can play in college, tell him to call me. I'll be his reference." It was unbelievable. It was a show. It was outstanding. So we get to the district playoffs. We lose up at William Tennant. It was William Tennant's first ever district playoff win. We're down, and I see the William Tennant kids all ecstatic, which they should be, right? They're out in the center court. They brought scissors and razor out, and they shaved the coach's head. He had told them that if they win a district playoff game, he's going to shave his head. He and I are friends today. Like he now coaches up at Philmont Christian.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time. I said, yeah, it was a good way to get a haircut. But that was a memory for that team. Then we moved on in the start of the Dan Giroux era. And what a pleasure it was to coach Dan.
Yeah.
Like you played with Dion, Dan was that type. He had a magnetism to him, a maturity beyond his years. He was comfortable talking to the media from the get-go. He was the first player that I ever hugged on a sideline. Like he comes out of a game and gives me a hug. My wife was like, "You should have seen your face. Like you were totally shocked." And Dan was laughing the whole time because he got me all sweaty. He was like, he told his teammates he was going to do it, and it was fun. But
when did you know he was going to be a player? I remember talking to Glenn Mallon, I mean, in 8th grade, and Glenn's like, "There's this kid coming up from Springfield that is really going to be a great player." I mean, how did you know?
So, small world. Basketball world's a small world. Summer before Dan's 8th grade, okay? So he just finished up 7th grade, and I'm down the shore, and we're on the beach, and Phil Martelli is walking by, okay? And Phil and I have known each other, and I would go to a lot of his practices. He always had an open door policy, good guy. So he sees me and comes over and says, "Listen, you have a young man that's in your program now. Was originally from Sharon Hill. His name's Dan Giroux." He said, "Do everything you can to get that young man." And I said, "Tell me about him." He goes, "Well, he's been my camper of the week, I think 5 years in a row." Okay. So he'd been going to St. Joe's for a number of years. So come back, talking with Skip, and he was the first guy that as an 8th grader we would bring up to work out with us in the off season. Mm-hmm. Mark Burns and a bunch of the upperclassmen were so good. Like they could have taken it the wrong way and said like, "Nah, you screw it. This is our time." But they were inclusive of Dan at every step of the way. And when it came time to decide for high school, and Dan's dad tells me this all the time, it was Dan's decision. Like his dad wanted him to go to a private school, but Dan insisted on wanting to come to Springfield. And that really changed our trajectory for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Actually, we get Dan. He plays freshman year. Starts by the time it's like his second or third game. He didn't start his first game. I didn't want to put that pressure on him, but he earned his way in. Just had a phenomenal freshman year, and then he grew. Had a great sophomore year. Then he grew more. Right, great junior year. Gets Delaware County Daily Times Player of the Year after his junior year.
Mm-hmm.
His recruiting is going on. A lot of schools involved. Early on you heard from like the Notre Dames, the Villanovas, the big schools, and then he started to find his niche. Right, and it was funny. I can remember when he committed to Richmond. Well, it was actually before he committed to Richmond. It was when Richmond initiated contact with him. 3 or 4 of the coaches that I would talk to about Dan on a regular basis, they would call just for an update. They always asked, like, who's involved? And 3 or 4 of them, after I said Richmond was involved, they said, listen, I really enjoyed recruiting Dan, but we're not getting him. Like, if Richmond's involved, Richmond's getting him. Yeah. And I found that to be very accurate. Like, Dan fell in love with the place. Chris Mooney did a great job recruiting him. The players did a great job recruiting him. Dan felt very comfortable down there, and he made a great decision. He had a great career there.
Great career.
Career, and it set him up for a great post-playing career, right?
Yeah.
Because it was the Princeton connection that really he played off of. That's
right.
It's gotten him to where he's now the head coach at Iona University.
Yeah.
And
prior to that, in the NBA, so. Really, really great.
Oh, he had a great NBA coaching career, with the Cavaliers. And that came through his 2 years that he was a volunteer assistant up at Princeton. Kobe Altman was an assistant at Columbia, and he and Dan struck up a friendship. Well, Kobe eventually became the assistant general manager with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and when a position opened up, Kobe recommended Dan for the job.
Outstanding. So my personal story about Dan Giroux is, as you know, when I have 3 boys, and when they were little, I would bring them up to the Springfield basketball games, and they were infants, 3, 4 years old, right when Dan Giroux was playing, maybe a little bit older. But even today, on my son's, he's moved out, but on his bedroom wall is a big poster of Dan Giroux at Richmond. So our kids have so many good memories of attending Springfield games and watching Giroux and Frankie, and it packed gym. I mean, you've had those packed gyms on and off, but that was the packed gym. You could not get a seat when those guys played.
In particular, I remember the Ridley game. Ridley, Springfield. Fans were coming over from Ridley trying to buy tickets at Springfield, and they eventually had to show their license to say that they were not Springfield, and they were cut off. Like they were limiting Ridley to, I think, 300 or 400 tickets, and then the balance were going to go to Springfield.
Yeah.
So
the game our kids talk about, and my son Sean in particular, is I think it was the Glenn Mills game.
Glenn Mills.
Willis Reed, where Giroux goes out, he gets elbowed in the face, and then he goes into the gym, comes out with a bloody, and the crowd's going crazy.
Goes crazy. So a couple things happened there. Like Frankie McKnight took over while Dan was out. Like, we were down like when it happened.
Yeah.
When Dan comes out, you're right. The place erupted. It was as loud as I ever remember the Blue Gym in my career. Think about that today, Ted. There's no way a doctor would have let him back on the floor.
That's right.
It would have been a concussion. It was a broken nose. Now, he didn't have a concussion, but in precautions, he probably doesn't come back on that floor.
Yeah.
Yet he came back, had the mask, had his nose packed. Again, one of my all-time favorite memories. Like that was terrific.
And they made a great run that year in the state tournament, right? I mean,
well, we made a great run. That was the year that Lower Merion ended up winning the state tournament, and we had 4 losses over the course of the year, and 3 of them were to Lower Merion, right? So they knocked us out of the district playoffs in the quarterfinals. They knocked us out of the state tournament in the round of 16. But we went up the first round of the state tournament. We went up to Hazleton. Okay, and it was the first time in my career that we'd gotten to the state tournament. And Glenn Mallon, our athletic director at the time, organized the bus. After the game, there was a dinner, but it was all first class. It was really, really well done. And we went up there and upset Hazleton in a game that the fans were shocked, right? Because Hazleton was it that year up in District 2. And then, of course, that earns us the right to come down and play Lower Merion in the next round. And it was a great game up at Norristown. Played well. It was just a matter that they had 3 Division I players and we only had 2. We had Dan and Frank. They had Ryan Brooks, Garrett Williamson, and a young Greg Robbins, who ended up being Dan's teammate at Richmond.
That's right.
Great
team.
That's what it came down to.
And a great game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then Dan graduates, right? So everybody's like, Springfield's going to take a major step back. Coincidentally, we also were going to drop from 4A to 3A, right? It was the year of the new classifications. And our guys had chip on their shoulder, like Frankie, Chris Vottenhausen, Danny McGarrigle. Like those guys were like, no, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. And we were. We were really good. We were very good. Now, people forget, we finished the year on a 3-game losing streak. And I take a lot of the responsibility for that because we only played, for the most part, we played 5 guys. But at times we would get to 6. We barely ever went to 7, right? So by the end of the season, fatigue definitely had taken its course. Yeah. So because we moved to 3A, the district doesn't start for another full week after the 4A district starts. So we have 2 full weeks. So we take some time off, and then we were much more strategic in our practices. They were shorter but more competitive. And the players came back and said, like, that's what did it for us. Like, the time off was great. We got our legs back. But the competition over those 2 weeks leading into the district run was terrific. And it culminated with, playing at Villanova against Holy Ghost Prep in a terrific game, a 1-possession game. We win that.
Is that the only district title of a Springfield team?
Second of all time. The other one was 1953 or 54. The year escapes me. Wayne Shealy's year. Okay, Wayne Shealy, yeah. Bill Carpenter,
sure.
Bill Kynette. If you have time, can I segue here?
Absolutely.
When Dan was a sophomore, so it had to be 2003 or 2004. A tour is coming through the school. Joe O'Brien leading a tour.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a few members of the first district title team coming through for their 50th anniversary. Okay. They were up for their reunion. Got a chance to talk with them. Like, that's basketball royalty to me.
Yeah.
Right? Don't think anything of it. And then 2007, we come back and we get the title. And one of the first people to reach out to me was Bill Kynette, who was a member of the first district title team. Like that was outstanding. I get emotional, thinking about it.
And Wayne Shealy was at the Bonner game.
Yep.
I talked to him afterwards.
Wayne's a great fan. I was with him yesterday at a softball game. He just loves sports. He loves youth, the activity of it, the camaraderie of it, everything about sports. So he's there every step of the way, So after we win the district, we go on and we play like Southern Lehigh. I forget some of the teams that we played. But we're winning like 1-point game, 2-point game. It was cardiac kid stuff. We're scheduled to play the 3rd round, and it was going to be out kind of in the Harrisburg area, but it snows, terrible snowstorm. They delay it for 2 days, and they move us to a school, Elko, which I had never even heard of, right? Mm-hmm. But it's in James Buchanan's backyard. Okay. And that's who our matchup is with, right? And we get up there, and at the time, our fans were outrageous. There was the Cougar crazies. They
Yeah.
would come, they would take their shirts off and paint up, and like it was fanatical. They were outstanding. They matched our enthusiasm, like up in the stands. Well, Elko installs a regulation: no painting, no body painting, no standing during the games. It was almost like they wanted it like a church. It was insane, Ted.
Hmm.
But they're hosting, so they get to call the rules. All right, so we're kind of squelched on that. Um, Game goes back and forth. Under a minute to go. There's a timeout, and we've got a 1 point lead. And no, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got a 1 point lead. And one of our players, Chris Vontenhausen, an emotional kid, plays with great emotion, right? And his sophomore and junior year, he got in trouble sometimes for talking too much to the opponents, and just so we challenged him his senior year to try to don't do it. Like, bite your tongue, be the bigger man, walk away. And he had done it the whole year phenomenally well. We're coming out, last time out, he goes up to a kid right in Buchanan and like points him in the chest and says something wise. And we're like, oh, why? Why did you do that? Sure enough, they run the play for the kid, comes off the screen, knocks down a basket. As the buzzer sounds, we lose by 1. We're like, oh, Chris, you didn't have to do that, right? But competitiveness got to him. That was just him. You know, it's what made him so much fun to have on the team and so great. Him and Frankie McKnight fought over everything. But it also was the reason we were so good.
Yeah.
You know,
That's great.
so that was fun. Then, and 2 years later, like we go through a lean year and a rebuilding year, and then the following year we get back to the district title game again against Holy Ghost Prep again. Okay. And it comes down to a 1-possession game. I can still picture it. We run a sequence. You've heard us call chin, right? We run a certain sequence. Well, a kid makes a move that we don't traditionally make out of chin, gets stuck under the rim, turns it over. They go down and score. We foul. We end up losing basically at the buzzer on that one. So two times against Holy Ghost Prep, one win, 1 loss. Against Tony Chapman, I think that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And Wally Ritecki is the only player ever in Springfield to play in 2 district title games. He was on the team as a freshman, and he was a key member of the team his senior year. So
that's great. There's another connection. You played with his father, right?
I played with his father. Yep. While he was a sophomore or senior year, he was a terrific referee. Just retired from it. Had a great run. While he was a phenomenal athlete. Football, he ended up playing football at Harvard. Intelligent, right? Was all Catholic basketball, and he was a very good baseball player as well. Like while he was, one of those terrific 3-sport athletes like yourself. And I'm proud to say, I've coached 2 of his sons, but we've been friends for 50 plus years. It's just a great connection.
Then you've coached your son, right?
I did, and Ted, that's one of those
teams too. Great teams.
Great teams. It was really tough to do. I don't know that I did it well. Like I was very tough on Kevin, but he would always say, "No, Dad, come on, bring it on." Funny story after games. Mentioned to Mr. Ritecki, like if it was a game that we maybe didn't play up to expectations, Mr. Ritecki would walk over to Kevin and say, I can give you a ride home.
That's probably the toughest part for a kid is now I got to go home with my coach.
100%. So, but Kevin handled it exceptionally well. He knows it was all done out of love. And he went on, played down at Washington College, had a nice career, and he met his future bride, and made lifelong friends. Like his friends are similar to my Ursinus friends, right? Like they're together. They're in each other's weddings. Oh my God, are their weddings? We've got 3 coming up like in the next 6 weeks. It's a great time. So yeah, coaching Kevin was tough, but it was also, I'm glad I had that experience.
Yeah.
and we had some really good times. Really good times. You know, then we made a trip back to the States in 2017 on a team that I don't know that people expected that. It was fun. And we had Kyle Long was our point guard. Kyle Sullivan was our shooting guard. Alex DeAngelis, who I just ran into in the supermarket yesterday, had his first son.
Tough kids.
Tough kids. Um, Justin Collins. Justin Collins was a tough kid. He's now assistant coach over at Bonner. And then a transfer that we got from Ridley after his freshman year, a kid by the name of Great Orgy, the all-time best name of a player I ever coached. Great Orgy, right? I still remember the day we went over to play O'Hara, and the announcer told us that they can't say that. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Sir, I apologize if I come across crass here, but that's that kid's name. What can't you say about his name? I know it sounds a little crazy here, but his name is Great Orgy." And the guy did not call him that. He called him Great Orgy. Yeah.
That's a funny story.
But the team really gelled. Again, Holy Ghost Prep enters into it. We played a great district game up there, and we were down at halftime, and Kyle Sullivan maybe was like 0 for 7 in the first half, and he could shoot the three pretty well. And at halftime, all we kept telling him is like, you got to keep shooting. Like, these are going to drop. He comes out after halftime and bang, bang, bang. 3 possessions in a row, threes, changes the whole game around. We end up winning, and it enabled us to qualify to play in the state tournament. State tournament game was a whole nother story. That was, you can look that one up on YouTube. We played Mechanicsburg at, was it Hershey High School. And it's a battle back and forth, really good game. And we had a couple tough kids, Kyle Long, Jaden McKenzie, who was a terrific football player, strong as an ox. Well, a bang play happens, and ball's on the floor under the basket, and a kid from Mechanicsburg jumps on it and kind of throws an elbow. Like, I didn't necessarily see this at the time. And Jaden, kind of like strong enough, the kid was on his back, did a push-up just to push himself up and to get off of the situation, right? Well, we're down the far end of the court, and it looked to me like right away they called a T, and I'm thinking, okay, they called Jaden for swinging, right? Wally Ratecki, some like the writer from the Daily Times, come up to me after the game and said, "Listen, Jaden did nothing wrong. That kid from Mechanicsburg threw an elbow. All he was doing was getting himself out of the area." Okay. But the refs insisted on it. They get a technical. We get a technical. They shoot. They win by 1. Like, just like an awful way to end the game. You watch the replay, and clearly the kid swung a violent elbow at Jaden, and Jaden didn't react. He was the bigger man. I was proud of him. And I was proud that I bit my tongue and didn't say anything like, "Jaden, why, how can you do that?" Because I just like, okay, we gotta figure out what we can do here to try and win this after giving up 3 points. But it was great. Like, for that team to experience the state playoffs, like that's another team that I think really exceeded expectations. That was a best case scenario, getting to a state tournament with that team.
Yeah.
Then we went into some pretty lean years, Ted. We had a 2-year stretch where we went 1-43, 1 win and 43 losses over a 2-year span. And the 1 win was late in that second year. It was against Marple Newtown, and their coaches still will say to me, like, we hate losing, but if we were going to lose to anybody, we were not disappointed because, like, we kind of earned it. Like, we got to the point where we were respectable again. And we had a young man, Mike Hoy, who was a freshman, hit some big foul shots for us to end that game. And Michael was really the one who helped us build the foundation to reestablish Springfield basketball. Truthfully, and Glenn will tell you this, like, I was seriously thinking about giving up at that point. It would have been, 26, 28 years or whatever it was. But I didn't think it was right to be at a place for so long and leave the cupboard bare.
Sure.
right? So,
Yeah.
like, I was never one to, like, I couldn't tell you what my record is, Ted. I have no idea, and I don't want to know.
Well, I'm sure it's the most wins from any coach in Springfield history. I would say that, Kevin.
Well, yeah, just duration.
A lot of success.
Well, I think the success is more the kids themselves.
Well, what I appreciated about your coaching, Kevin, beyond winning games was number one, the number of kids that you touched and went on to be of good character,
Yeah,
and, good men, and you built a program there.
yeah,
And my kids, you were out there in the summers, playing basketball down at Powell Road Park, and
yep,
allowed my kids to participate. And you, you talked about it earlier about building a culture. You had a culture of motivation,
yep,
enthusiasm, and working hard,
yep,
and that was all Springfield basketball. So
yeah.
that's what I think makes you a great coach and a legend in Springfield basketball.
That just means old, Ted. I've enjoyed every minute of it too. Like, sure, the 1 in 43, that was hard, but the kids were great,
Yeah,
great young men. Like, one of them has helped out over at O'Hara past
yeah,
few years. Mackay Terry, great young man. Cole Rhodes went down to New Orleans for school to Loyola. Um, the, Busby, he's out working in the world, making something of himself. Brendan McShane, he tried basketball at Newman. Now he finished up at Westchester. Like, even though we struggled, those teams, those kids stayed together.
yeah.
Um, then we had the situation, the AJ Grandi situation, and that was as tough a time as we had.
What was that, Kevin?
So AJ played ninth grade basketball, and then he decided to commit to baseball. He was a very good baseball player, but he continued to play CYO high school basketball. And after his junior year of CYO high school basketball, his coach down there, Pat Marley, said, AJ, I'm not coaching you in high school CYO anymore. You have to go play for Springfield. And I had been working with AJ to kind of encourage him to come back. Well, we end up with COVID hitting at that time, and we had an abbreviated season. So all the timing was off, but AJ would come up to our preseason workouts, and a couple times he would beg out, which is unlike AJ, that like something was bothering his stomach. So you just think like antacids or something.
Mm-hmm.
He goes through the season. He has an unbelievable year, unbelievable for not having played for Springfield since freshman year. He did some crazy things. He had a game over at Sun Valley where I think he scored like 36 points. He made just about everything he shot. He was a terrific wing player. Just had great athleticism. Season's over. He moves on to baseball. He's having a great baseball season, but then his stomach issues start coming back. He's diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and within a year, AJ succumbed to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, still wears band.
Nice. That's tough. I mean, you guys are a family there. You lose somebody like that, and it's like losing a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Excuse me. Sorry.
no, I understand.
Didn't expect that, Ted.
Yeah, well, it's an emotional thing. It's a horrific thing, but
Sorry about that.
it's okay. It's all right.
Um,
Like I was saying, it's you build a family like that. You spend so much time with them through the season and seasons, and they're family members.
they really are. Speaking of that, like today, before I came on here, we actually had our first open gym to start the new season. Like
Wow.
the players were getting antsy. He said, "Coach, can we open the gym?" And while we were on here, a text came through from Will Carr, and Will Carr is another interesting story. He's a hell of a player, and he's going to be a phenomenal player. Will's father, Bill, was one of my players at Bonner. The 2 years I was at Bonner, Billy Carr
Yeah. I
was a
played a lot of
very
summer league games.
yeah
Hell of a player.
hell of a player, and he's a hell of a dad too. So he's raising a very very good family. So again, the connections,
Yeah.
good stuff. I want to comment on your Mike Ciano interview, which I thought was terrific. And talking about the tough times that Mike may have had
Yeah.
at home, and his comment was 100% what our situation was. Like, you didn't talk about it. You just
That's
moved
right.
on. That generation just moved on.
That's right.
You know, and I really appreciated that because we certainly had that in our life.
Absolutely. And I think we've learned something from it. So
Oh, 100%,
we've grown from
100%.
it.
Yep. So, anything else you want to cover, Ted?
I think we've done it, Kevin. We've probably only got family members left listening to this so far. So, but
Yeah,
it was all great. It was all great.
like Mike also said, it's going to grow. You are a natural at it. You're very good.
Well, I
You're very
appreciate
good.
you taking the time. Any other life lessons or comments you want to make before we go, Kevin?
No words of wisdom or anything. I think you just got to stay with your passion, And I have to thank my wife. She's been a saint. We raised 4 children, and she never complained once.
Amazing.
You think about it. She's raising kids, and I'm working a full-time job and then running off to coach basketball from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Like, do you think I gave a lot of baths?
That's the life of a coach,
She was a saint, and she is a
Yeah.
saint. So,
Yeah, she is.
and every year at the banquet, I tell her I really appreciate and love how she lets me come out and play with my high school basketball players. So,
That's great.
yeah, it's been great.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of Springfield Township and certainly all the players and basketball community you've coached over the years. You've been an inspiration really to a lot of kids and coaches, and we appreciate and thank you for the service and the commitment to all these kids.
Well, it's never felt like a service, Ted. It's been a passion. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Kevin.